die. Go too fast. I'm taking 3.
I'm going for the St. Louis now.
Oh no!
Son of a bitch.
You get your 2?
Yeah. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Thotgor here, and today I've got 2 video clips. And the first video clip, you can see we are on fault line. I'm divisioned up here with Bezzy and GameGoon, and we're all in tier 7s. Well, Bezzy's in his Cleveland, so yeah, more or less tier 7. But what we're going to look at in today's video is sort of a review of cruiser flexibility. Just, you know, maybe taking another look at it just to give you some more examples. But also with this first clip, you may recall in previous video I had mentioned, I don't know what video it was, may have been playing aggressively, defensive video, anyway. I'd mentioned that if your team is really coordinated, and if you're really pushing the enemy back and whatnot, you might not have killed many of their ships as of yet, but it's so demoralizing to the enemy team to see their ships blow up, to see them lose ground, and to really not have control of even half the map. And that's so demoralizing to the enemy that they just start giving up. You can see it in chat. They'll start typing their GGs. The battle isn't even over. They still would have a good chance of winning. But because we are being so aggressive and so coordinated, they just give up and have, you know, just know that there's no chance of them to win. And that's what you want to try to do in these battles where you notice that your team is really coordinated and you guys are really really pushing, you have the lead, you want to press home that advantage, and you want to demoralize the enemy so that, again, they give up before they've actually lost. So that's what we're going to take a look at here, as well as some cruiser flexibility. So you can see that I have gone on to the west side on fault line. GameGoon and Bezzy are on the east side. They spawned over in that direction, so they're going to help the destroyers over there take that channel on the east side, and myself, I'm going to help push the west side. The original plan here was that the west would be the offense and the east would be the defense. That's only a plan, though. I mean, and keep in mind, you have to be really fluid when you play this game. You can't just commit yourself to one strategy. You have to pay attention and adapt to the situations as they arise, especially when you're in a cruiser. Your cruiser is so flexible that, you know, even if, say, I was pushing on this side here like I am now, if our east side was completely open, or if it suddenly failed, or everyone got killed over there, I'm in a cruiser, I'm fast, maneuverable, I've got good range, you know, good armament. I'm able to just easily switch from the east side and, you know, sail myself over to the east side to help out there. So, you know, really look at the flexibility when you're in your cruiser. Keep in mind that your hands aren't tied like they are in a battleship, where you're slow and not so maneuverable that, you know, once you've gone one direction, you don't necessarily have the option of going to the other side of the map to help support. You probably won't get there in time, at least with the earlier tier battleships. Later tier battleships, a little different because most of them can do upwards of 30 knots, so yeah, it makes them a little more flexible. So we've got a Cleveland popping up here. I put some shots into him, but I have no real chance of hitting him. I don't expect to hit him, but I still get some nice shots on him. Not too bad at all. I had high explosive loaded because I assumed that I would run into a destroyer first, and I wanted to have my high explosive ready for that. Now we have a few battleships coming up. You can see right now in terms of the enemy dispersion, it does look like they've all gone over to the west side. Now, you can see that the majority of these ships here are battleships. There are some cruisers mixed in with them, but for the most part, the enemy team seems to have grouped up before they did their push. Generally, this is a good strategy to employ because you're with your team, you're able to support each other, concentrate fire, and take down enemy ships. However, something you want to consider when you're doing that is you need to take a look at the ships that are around you. If you're in, say, a Miyoko like I am today, and the rest of the ships that are around me are all New Mexicos, New Yorks, Colorados, slow battleships, it's probably not a good idea for me to stay with them, for me to lower my speed and stay with them throughout the whole match, because I'm tying my hands behind my back. I'm essentially taking myself from being a flexible, awesome cruiser to being, yeah, support, I guess. Support for the larger ships. And you lose a lot of the advantage when you do that. What I would recommend is if you do want to group up with your battleships, it's always a good idea to do it. But set little goals for yourself here. So the first, I don't know, 2 or 3 minutes of the battle, you're going to be at a slower speed. You're going to be providing the escort for the battleship. But your main objective here is to cover the battleship from the air, right? Once that happens, and once that initial airstrike is over, put yourself back to full throttle, get back into the battle. It's simple enough. You do not want to stay next to the battleships the whole time as a cruiser. You're limiting your flexibility severely by doing that. Now you can see I did get a nice devastating strike there on the New York. I launched some torpedoes. He wasn't interested in maneuvering at all, and I got him. Now we did have the enemy ship that was briefly in our cap, starting to cap, so that's why I turned this way. My idea was that I was going to swing back and take that guy out, because I'm flexible enough to do it, but my team was on top of it, and they took him out, so excellent. Good job by the team. You can see on the east side that Game Goon and Bezzy have now taken that channel, and they're pushing beyond it. So they're harassing any enemy carriers that might be over there, and they're really putting pressure on the guys who are now attacking us, or us on the west side here, because if the enemy's looking at their minimap, they see my allied ships over there, and they know that they're about to get capped, so this starts to make them reconsider their strategies. This is the beginning of a demoralizing effect here for the enemy. You can tell that they're kind of scrambling around now. They don't necessarily know what they want to do. The battleships suddenly aren't so convinced that they're just going to plow through the west side, and they might suddenly decide to turn back. In your battleship, you have to keep that sort of thing in mind, when to turn back, and setting limits and little goals for yourself in that battleship, because you're so slow that if you don't do it, if you just keep pressing forward, you'll find yourself at a position, you might find yourself without any allies around you at all, and things can go really bad really quickly. So I do see that Cleveland up there, and I did launch torpedoes at the Cleveland. I was actually talking to one of my clanmates here, Blood and Guts. He, for the most part anyway, when I tend to play with him, he's usually in battleships, and he had bought himself an Thotgor. Now, some of you may know my concern with the Thotgor drivers, chiefly being that they just don't know how to play at this higher tier. They might be like a tier 3 or tier 4 or tier 5 player. They have a bit of money, so they buy the Thotgor, take it out, and kill some teammates with torpedoes. So, not great. You know that I'm skeptical of the Thotgor drivers. So anyway, I was playing with Blood and Guts and Bezzy last night. Actually, well, I'll have some of those replays in the upcoming days here. But anyway, we were playing some battles in those ships, and Blood and Guts was asking some advice on cruisers. And one thing I made clear to him first, right off the bat, is your Thotgor does have torpedoes. They're great torpedoes, but they're not necessarily meant to be used offensively. They are a defensive weapon. The way that they're mounted on the ship, you can't shoot them off like you can a destroyer. You just don't have that firing arc on these torpedoes. Generally speaking, your torpedoes are going to be shot from midships to the stern. That's sort of your firing arc. You wouldn't be able to go forward. And another important point there is, I used to do this a lot as well when I first got into my Japanese cruisers in closed beta. While I was getting used to the torpedoes, it's like, get into the cruiser, alright, I got some great torpedoes here, gonna fire them off at the enemy, and I would try and position my ship so that I could get torpedo hits on people. And typically when I do that, I would die. The reason is I'd lose sight of like the strategic objective, the strategic flow of the map. I wouldn't see that, I'm all out here alone trying to get torpedoes and suddenly the focus of all enemy fire. So keep that in mind. Your torpedoes are defensive on your Japanese cruisers for the most part. Obviously, as I mentioned in my video yesterday, if you have a shot with your torpedoes, definitely take it, right? If you don't have to go out of your way to shoot off your torpedoes, then that's a right torpedo move. Shoot the torpedoes. If you need to go out of your way to fire those torpedoes, might want to reconsider. Your primary armament is your guns. Keep that in mind. Got another nice kill there. I believe it was in New Mexico, maybe. Who knows? But not doing too bad at all. You can see, unfortunately, Bezzy and Game Goon have died, but their contribution to the team is really unquestionable. I mean, they pushed the east side, killed all the enemy ships over there, pushed into the base with the other allied ships who were on the east side. Sure, Bezzy and Game Goon did die, but it opened the way for the remaining allied ships to start capping the base. I'm not sure if it has happened yet, or if it happened earlier, or if it's about to happen, who knows. But you would notice in chat, the enemy team starts throwing up the GGs. This is a hopeless loss, the team sucks, all that stuff. Yeah, the enemy team wasn't too great, but it's too easy to say that the enemy team was terrible and we just steamrolled them. Why not build yourself up a little, build your team up a little and say, well, yeah, you guys weren't that great, but we had an awesome team. We had a really good strategy. We worked together, which was really important. I didn't coordinate with any of my team members in chat. Obviously, I'm with, on TeamSpeak with Game Goon and Bezzy, but for the most part, I was alone. They were on the other side of the map. But I kept focus, and I kept looking at where my allies were and where I would need to be to help support them or to take advantage of maybe an open spot, using the flexibility of my cruiser, not only for my advantage, but for the team's advantage. Opening up areas, taking out enemies, like that New York I took out, right? Like, sure, he was in New York, tier 5, but he still could have done a bit of damage. You never know. But the battle's over, and it was a victory. I mean, there was no question that we weren't going to win it. And you can see with the results as well, like where I'm 3rd overall for experience earned, this had a large portion to do with the team. The team was great. We worked together. My next video, we are looking at Ocean. I'm in my Cleveland, I'm not divisioned with anyone, and we're going to take a look at some more cruiser flexibility, and also some strategy for Ocean. I always like to talk strategy when I'm on the Ocean map. The reason for this is so many people don't like this map, and I don't understand why they don't like the map. We're playing a naval game, and I know it's a game, and I know that it's, not too historical, not 100% historical here, but naval battles are fought on the open ocean for the most part. I mean, unless you're getting in there to prevent landings and stuff like that, like, the invasion of Norway and crap like that, but I just don't understand why people don't like the map. It's boggles my mind. I mean, we're in ships, we're on an open ocean, and we're fighting. This, to me, this map here is the ultimate map for ships. The strategic options are endless on this map. You working as a team just comes in so handy on this map. I mean, you could even group your entire team up as one blob and move together as a fleet towards the enemy and take them out. If you do that, I would suggest just going straight up the middle. If you're on one of the flanks, yeah, it's alright, but some of those ships might be out of firing range of the enemy ships, because generally speaking on this map, you can see my team is heading up the east side, or my allied team is heading up the east side, so the enemy team is probably heading down the west side. Typically that's what happens on this map. People go to the extreme fringes, which I can appreciate and makes sense, but again, we're on ocean. Strategic options are endless on this map. Now, I'm going to give a shout out here to the carrier player. I'm not sure what his name was, but anyway, he played a great game. The reason why I give the shout out to him, is because you're going to see soon enough here that the enemy carrier goes hunting our carrier, and the enemy carrier does what you would suspect. He goes to the spot where he believes the enemy carrier would most likely be. Luckily, our carrier knows how to not only control his planes, but to control his ship, and moves his ship with the majority of the team that's pushing on the east side, or up that east side. So by the time the enemy planes get to where they think the carrier is, he's not there, and instead they find me, an angry Cleveland with lots of AA guns. So, shout out to that carrier player. I always like to see that when the carriers are actually moving around, not just staying where they originally spawned, or not just finding some convenient hiding spot off in a corner. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, your carrier is two parts. You've got your planes and you've got your ship. If you're only playing your planes, then you're only 50% effective. If you're doing both, playing your planes, moving your ship around, keeping it within a good distance of the front lines or the main battle line, then yeah, you're really taking advantage of the carrier itself. So you can see my allied team is continuing their push on the east. I can see this, and I see these enemy ships popping up. Most notably the destroyer is what I was most concerned with. So I'm going now over to the west. I'm using my flexibility of the cruiser to reposition from the east to the west. I no longer want to be with the offensive group. I really want to go back to the defensive group, because I don't want their destroyers to come into our base and start capping us. If we don't have a few cruisers defending, those destroyers can easily slip through. Destroyers are so dangerous. I've talked about it before. I staunchly believe that they are the most dangerous ship that you are going to come across in this game so far. I mean, unless they, drastically change some of the ship's characteristics and whatnot. But that's how I see destroyers. So I want to come over here and I want to get them. So I've got this guy here in front of me. I'm going to start putting shots into him. You can see I have an allied destroyer. There he is. He's with me as well, so I'm helping to support this guy. Because I want my allied destroyer to stay alive, and I want their destroyer to die. Now luckily, again, our great carrier pilot comes in and gets a nice torpedo strike on the destroyer. He's dead, he's gone. Don't really have to worry about him too much anymore, so now I can circle back and slowly push up the west side, just to see what ships are there. For the most part, it's just me and the allied destroyer I have with me. I have and I can count on my carrier to help support me as well. Again, going back to the shout out to the carrier pilot, carrier captain, he played one hell of a game. It was a really, really good job by that player. Now, the enemies are kind of questioning at this point. You can see I would have expected by this time that the majority of their team would be more south on that west side, but they weren't, and I didn't really know why, and I suspect it's because the majority of my team is pushing up that east side. The enemy sees this, and they're not willing to just leave their cap undefended, so the majority are staying back to defend. You can see the enemy carrier fighters right there. They were trying to find our carrier. Instead, all they found was me, my defensive fire ability, and they just burned. It was great. I love shooting down planes, especially in my American cruisers. As I'm sure you know, with my American cruisers, I'm focused on anti-air ability. My guns are still considered primary, but definitely my anti-air is the special of my American cruisers. I've got more enemies in front of me. I'm continuing to put fire into them. I believe that's in New Mexico. It might be Colorado. And there's some enemy bombers. Again, they were on their way to look for our carrier. Does anyone see where the carrier is? If you don't, he's actually on the east side. He might be riding the blue line, but I'm going to say he's not, that he's just right on the edge of the map going forward. I don't know if he's around the blue line or not. I praised him up, so I'm not going to say that he so I don't want to say he's around the blue line. And then there's some more enemy torpedo bombers. Again, all they find instead of our carrier is an angry Cleveland with defensive fire ability, and I just shoot these guys right out of the sky. They do get one torpedo off at me, but just cut throttle, turn away from it, and I managed to dodge it with room to spare, so not bad at all. And you know, it's not stretch of the imagination for that enemy carrier captain to say, yeah, the enemy carrier is probably over there, or, you know, at least maybe he'll come across a destroyer. That's not out of the question. I can understand his strategy. But our carrier was just on top of all that. He knew what was happening, and he knew how to position himself. Like, look, he's relatively close to the main battle line. It's just so advantageous to everyone involved. Everyone concerned. Now I do have a New York, and I'm going to be putting fire into that guy. We're going to try and get this guy done and down. You know, maybe he'll shake hands with Davy Jones on his way down. Who knows? Now these lower tier battleships are really easy to kill when you are in a Cleveland shooting high explosive like this. No problems with them whatsoever. You do massive amounts of damage in every volley. I really like the Cleveland, as I'm sure you all know. The battle is going fairly well. You can see that my team on the east has cleared up some of the enemy destroyers. We still have one more left, but now they're starting to push deep into enemy territory, with the idea being to cap their base. I'm still relatively on the west side. I mean, I'm kind of getting into the middle now, setting course for their cap as well. But really still continuing to support my destroyer friend who's just off to my port side, and taking out any ships that are available to me. It's like this New Mexico here. I think it's New Mexico. Yeah, probably. So I'm, you know, putting fire into that guy. He did have some torpedoes going into him, but unfortunately they ran out of their range and disappeared there. Not a big deal. Again, with the high explosive on the Cleveland, I can do so much damage to enemy battleships. Like, you know, this guy's on fire in multiple spots. I would say at least two. I continue to pour fire into him, continue to take out his AA guns, his secondary batteries, doing critical damage, and very shortly get the kill on this guy, because he just doesn't have the hit points. I mean, we're doing so much damage to him. He can't repair, he can't heal, and I got the kill. So that was nice as well. Now we have another enemy ship up there. I think it's an Oba. It's either an Oba or a Miyoko. That's an Oba. You can tell by the 2 turrets on the front as opposed to the 3 that the Miyoko would have. So we're going to try and get that guy down as well. But they only have 4 enemy ships left. We've only lost 1 ship so far. This is an amazing battle here. The team really, you know, pulled it off by by moving up that west side, the carrier being there to support them while they're doing it, and staying coordinated, you know, setting objectives, killing the destroyers first before they move in, which is always a good idea. Those destroyers are so dangerous. And then on my behalf, you know, splitting away from the main push up that east side, going to the west side, helping out the destroyer down there, and stopping the enemy ships from getting to our cap. There were destroyers, they were battleships, and so we really cleaned those guys up as well. It was very nice. So we've got this enemy destroyer here in front of us. We need to take this guy down. He's the last enemy destroyer. We're capping their base. They've only got 3 ships remaining. Now they only have 2 ships remaining. And there we go. 1 ship remaining. The last enemy ship is their carrier. There's no hope for this guy. We've won. And so again, you know, I don't understand why people don't like this map. It's, well, maybe I can understand a little because there's no islands to use as cover, but this map is like a blank page. You can do whatever you want on this map. You can use any strategy at all you want on this map. I think it's a great map. I really enjoy it. I would enjoy seeing other ocean maps. I don't think they're very hard to do, obviously, because it's just ocean. All it would require is maybe a change of the lighting, change of the sky, and then there, blam, new ocean map. But, So overall results are pretty fantastic. It is 1.5 times, so that would lead to the overall experience. But in terms of base experience, it was over 2,000 base experience. And what I was most happy with was the 324,000 credits that I made. So, end of today's video. Thank you very much for taking the time and watching it. Hopefully, you took something from my cruiser flexibility review, and just a strategic review here on Ocean as well. So as always, I do hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you in tomorrow's video.